but I don't know why. You hit the road, but you don't realize I won't look back when you're around. I won't think twice when you're gone. Don't hesitate to call me back, 'cause I won't be there. I won't look back when
Testing, testing. Hi, this is Jason from Action Camera, and I just wanted to give you a few of my thoughts on the Sigma 35 1.2 art lens that I was lucky enough to be able to shoot with for just under a week. And thanks to Lou at Sigma Lenses, I was able to get that lens, shoot it on my A7R3 in a bunch of different scenarios, including a couple of in-studio chart tests, as well as a portrait session, and just as a walk-around lens. So here goes. Okay, let's start with build quality. Build quality is basically what you'd come to expect from the Sigma art lenses. It's very well constructed, good weather sealing, feels very good in the hands. The focus ring felt really solid, good feedback. The button, the levers were all up to spec. Like I said, basically what you'd come to expect from an art lens. Let's go move on to image quality. Image quality, again, the entire lineup of art lenses is fantastic with regard to image quality. This lens, however, I would say stands out among even art lenses. Even at a 1.2, it was very sharp, center to corner, all the way through. I did some tests, as I said. I'll be showing you a chart and some images with regards to the image quality and sharpness of the lens. There was a little bit of barrel distortion noticeable. In fact, I would even say slightly more barrel distortion than the previous Sigma 35-1.4, which I've owned for a little over a year now. Found that a little bit shocking, but it's obviously nothing that can't be corrected either in camera with the profile or later in Photoshop or whatever editing program you use. So no big deal there. Color seemed true. Not a big color science guy, but skin tones look natural. Everything looked normal to me as far as color goes. Let's move on to Boca. Well, if you're buying a 1.2 lens, there's a good chance Boca is something you're concerned with. They did something with regards to this lens that I'm going to skip ahead here because I wanted to discuss this lens with regard to what Sony usually does with their lenses. And basically, when you buy a modern Sony lens, you expect to see the aperture ring. You expect to see 11 aperture blades as opposed to the standard 9. Sony has been putting the focus hold button on the body, which you can then reprogram. Sony has been big on putting the declickable switch on the aperture ring, so you can use it for smooth aperture transitions if you're doing video. All of these features are in the Sigma lens. It's almost as if they decided, well, if we're going to design a lens primarily for the E mount, though I know it's also available in L mount, let's not kid ourselves, 9 out of 10, if not more, of these lenses will be sold in the E mount or the FE mount for the Sony users. So it was interesting to see that they decided to go with all these features that you find in the latest Sony lenses, but I think it's a good idea. But those 11 aperture blades, along with the 1.2, again with regards to Boca, was phenomenal. Usually you don't get that level of blurry background with a 35. Even with a 1.4, I know it's only a matter of inches with regard to depth of field when you're talking about a standard portrait focal length or distance to subject, but it was still very nice. And I'll also show you some images displaying the Boca. This one, weight, is what people will notice instantly. As soon as they pick up the lens, as well as the size of the lens, it's quite large. The lens comes in just under 2.5 pounds. It is quite large with an 82 millimeter filter thread, if I remember correctly. And that's what you come to expect from, say, a 24 to 70 2.8. So it is not a light lens. That said, my portrait shoot that I did, I carried the lens around for about an hour and a half all around Old Sacramento, a couple of locations, and it was literally just the camera body, the lens, and a wrist strap. I didn't even have a full neck strap on, and it was not that bad. Would I want to carry it around for an entire, say, event, like a festival or an 8-10 hour wedding? Probably not. I would definitely move to a shoulder strap or maybe even a lighter lens if that was the case. So, uses. Obviously, when you go into 1.2 like that, you start to think of things like nighttime photography or astrophotography or Boca, basically. And so, yes, the lens is basically what I would consider a portrait lens. 35 is about as wide as I usually go with a portrait lens. So it's right there if you want to do environmental portraiture, include some of your surroundings, but still be able to blur some of that background. There really is no better option for that at this point in the 35 millimeter focal length. And I may be wrong, but I don't think there is another Sony FE or even L mount 35 millimeter 1.2 out there. This is the only option, and it's a great option as far as, you know, the image quality that it delivers and the blurriness that it delivers. One special use that I can think of is for conventions or cons, as I attend a lot. I do a lot of convention and cosplay shooting, and what you're faced with doing often is either bringing a lens that can blur the background like an 85, but then you don't really have enough room to back up. Often the conventions are very crowded. There's a lot of people around you. There's a lot of people in back of your subject as well. But you're faced with trying to shoot a full body shot often because these people have put in a lot of effort into their costumes and you want to photograph the entire costume. You end up getting a lot of distracting things in the background. Well, with a 35 millimeter 1.2, that's really your best option to be able to shoot a full body shot in a crowded environment. You don't have a lot of space to back up. You're trying to blur the background or remove distracting elements of the background. I really can't think of a better lens for that at the moment. So there is that. Okay. Winding it down here. Competition. Obviously, Sigma has its own competition. They have the 35 1.4, which was, I believe, the very first Sigma art lens. It's phenomenal. I've used it for over a year now. It's one of my favorite lenses. It's a go-to lens of mine for portraiture. And it comes in at about half the cost. Right now, I think it retails for $800. Don't quote me on that, but that's roughly half the cost of the $1,500 you'd be paying for the brand new Sigma 2.0 or 1.2, excuse me. So if someone were to ask me, is it worth it? Well, that's a tough choice. I never like to tell other people how to spend their money or whether it's worth it to spend that amount of money. Is it twice as good as the 1.4? No, it is not. There's nothing that's twice as good as the Sigma Art 35 1.4. It's a great lens, and it's, you know, short of perfect, but no lens is perfect. And certainly this 1.2 is not twice as good. So it's going to be for people who want no compromise. They want the best of the best, and they're willing to pay extra for it. It's definitely one of those exotic lenses that will give you bragging rights. It'll get some oohs and ahs. So it really comes down to whether you're willing to spend for that. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. As far as competition outside of Sigma, there's also the Sony FE 135 or 35 millimeter 1.4 Zeiss lens. That's very similar to the actual original Sigma 35, except for that the Sony, like I was mentioning, they do have the declickable aperture ring on that one, which I like. I know a lot of people have been bad-mouthing having the aperture ring on the lens. I watch a lot of the reviews and the YouTubers out there, but I love it because first of all, you're not going to be shooting a 1.4, a 1.2 lens and not shooting wide open a lot. That'd be kind of weird. You could save yourself a lot of money and get a 1.8 if you don't want to shoot it wide open. So when I'm shooting, I love to be able to know that I can just turn that ring all the way till it stops and bam, I know I'm wide open. Stop down just a little bit, 1 click, 2 click, and you know you're stopping down to 1.6 or 1.8. You know where you're at without even looking at the menu, looking in the viewfinder to see what your settings are, and you're not sitting there spinning the aperture ring until you just assume you've opened it wide open again. At that point, you either have to look at the camera, okay, yeah, I'm finally wide open, or you just spin it till there's no doubt. Whereas with the aperture ring, boom, turn it till it stops, you know you're wide open. I love it. I love the feedback right there without having to look down. Actually, the last one, I kind of covered that accidentally, but value, it is not a cheap lens at $1,500. So again, you're paying for that no compromise excellence in the lens, which it's tough for me to tell someone to go ahead and do that. Again, you have to be one of those people that wants the best of the best and you're willing to pay for it. So let's go take a look at some of the images that I got with this lens before we wrap up. Thanks for watching.
I won't look back when you're around. I won't think twice when you're gone. Don't hesitate to call me back, 'cause I won't be there. I won't look back. I don't know why she told me it's not your fault, but you don't realize that I never wonder what's the truth in your eyes. There's a light that makes me blush. I won't look back when you're alone. I won't think twice when you're gone. Don't hesitate to call me back, 'cause I won't be there. I won't look back when you're alone. I won't think twice when you're gone. Don't hesitate to call me back, 'cause I won't be there. I won't look back. I it all forgiven.